Alright, so this week's lesson is on writing characters. So that's characters in your story, right? So introduction question. Who are your favorite characters from fictional media? So be it a book, a movie, show. Like why do you guys like them? Red guy DHMIS? Okay, this one I am lost. Okay. I love red guy, he's funny. Okay. Is it bad that you like Kirby because it's cute and optimistic? I mean, that's perfectly fine, right? If you like it, right? You like it, right? I think everyone likes different characters for different reasons. It's not like, oh, you like this character, this is fine. It means you have good taste. You like this character, oh, you're wrong, right? I mean, there's no such thing, right? Okay, Solid Snake from Metal Gear series. Ooh. So when you guys are picking your favorite character, why do you like them? Jules Steeler from Mega Man Star Force, he's the kid with depression because his father was lost in space, but because he's thrust into dangerous situation, he has to become a hero. You love well-written characters with flaws. You love what Brandon Sanderson did to Kelsier from Mistborn. Ooh. Isaac from Castlevania anime. Garrus Vakarian because he's hot. Drake and Ben 10. Oh, Zuko from Avatar. Hey. Character for Zuko's character development for Redemption. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. You guys have like a bunch of characters that you like. So I think it's good to think about these characters. Hang on. Everyone has deep reasons and you're just like, I think he's cute. I think that's fine. Like that's good. So just think about your favorite characters. You think about how they you can think about how they like what are the reasons you like them and like you think about the different aspects of them. And so as we go through today's lesson, maybe you can like, maybe understand a bit more about the characters you like. In fact, think about the characters you dislike as well and all everything in between. I think it's quite an interesting way to analyze. Yeah, and I'm also gonna break it down into very technical aspects of the characters that you can think about. So for those people who say like I have trouble coming up with characters or I have my writing tends to end up very technical. I think that's fine because I also think in very technical terms and sometimes I think about characters by breaking them down into like certain blocks of foundation. And so I'm gonna show you how I usually break it down as well, and you guys can do that for your own characters as well. Yeah. So one thing to note is also that a strong character voice will help drive your story. This kind of helps to. I mean, it's something useful to think about. Sometimes writers, one of the pitfall that writers face is that their character doesn't have a lot of personality, or they feel very bland, right? Or it feels like they're just following along for the story, right? In certain cases, that can be done well if you use it masterfully, but most of the time, right, it can end up as like a very like it either feels like the character is bland or nothing's going on, or it feels like the reader supposed to self-insert themselves into the fantasies. I think one of the complaints of Twilight. That one I didn't read it personally, but the idea is the character wasn't very like the character is just like, oh, what was me? What's happening? And then like two heroes come and save the day, and you're just like, oh, hee hee, I get to choose, right? So I think it's important to think about how your character like drives your story. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about the different aspects, starting from like the very superficial levels, like surface level, and then we'll slowly get into deeper and deeper parts of it. Okay, so when we look at the character, you can think of it as an iceberg, where there's like stuff that you see on top, but there's so much stuff below. I mean, it's basically like human beings, right? The stuff you see like people see about you has not, like, you know, it doesn't say about like your personal struggles, right? You know, like you see someone's annoyed and someone's grumpy and you're just like, man, this guy's an asshole, right? But that's not necessarily true. Maybe he has a bad day, or maybe he had to deal with something difficult today and he has no energy to deal with you, and you're just like, ha, this guy's an ass. Okay, so same way, right? You can think about on the surface level, there's appearance, there's the action, there's their expressions and their habits and quirks, right? But below below that, like, you know, we can think about what their thoughts, right? What are their emotions, what are their motives and goals, what are their beliefs, their past, their history, right? All your backstory comes here, right? And like what are their core values, right? So it's useful to break down characters like this. And if you look at some of the characters that you like or even dislike, right? A lot of it boils down, like, sure, some of it is on the surface, right? But usually the core parts are like the core value. So you say you like Kirby, right? That you like, that is cute, so that's under appearance. But he also seems innocent, right? Innocent and nice, right? So innocence tends to be under the iceberg, right? Or like you say, like Zuko, right? Zuko has to go through this whole character development journey of like wanting to hunt the avatar down because of like certain past, or like, you know, he want to match up, right, his own personal issues, right? And you see that change over time, right? That's core values, right? So you can slowly figure that out from your characters. But let's take a look at surface level first. So we can start with appearance, right? The face, facial expressions, body language, clothes and accessories, defining features. Right. So these are things to think about. Like try yes, you can just randomly pick some of that, but you can also think about how they tie into the personality later down the line, right? So if there's like deeper aspects of that person, right? How can you show that through the way, like through their physical appearance, right? So maybe if you say this guy is a fighter, right? One of the ways that you can say is like, okay, he has a muscular build, right? He has scars from when he's been in battle. He's missing an arm, right? The clothes he wear tends to be more armor, right? Body language might be more like, you know, burly kind of thing, right? Or you could also choose to contrast those, right? Maybe this guy, he looks very rough and looks very, like, very fierce, but inside he's like a really nice guy, and he's like, oh no, sorry I offended you, I didn't mean to, oh no. Like, you know, how can I make this right? Right. So you can use like appearances to contrast, or you can use appearances to also like amplify certain traits. That's up to you. Yeah. Giant teddy bear trope, basically. I'll play around with it. It's fun, right? Like, I think there's a lot to explore. You can make certain, you know, it's up to you. Pick something. If it works for the character, go with it. If it doesn't, feel free to change, right? I think writing is flexible like that. Okay, so for demeanor, you can think about their actions, their expressions and habits. So I listed some examples here. Feel free to come up with more. I think like there is no way I can list down every single adjective to describe a person, right? But you can think about that, and the way they speak. I think the way they speak also helps to tell you more about the character. So do they, like, yeah, I mean, usually you think about speed, pitch, right? But the way they use words as well. Like, are they very long-winded? Do they use 20 words when 3 would suffice, right? Uh, right. Do they, like, some people, like, for instance, sometimes people, when they want to say, oh, this is a scientist character, he's a nerd, he doesn't know how to talk to people, and then it's like, yeah, so to be precise, like, if we were to examine closely the hypothesis, the generation of this hypothesis where blah blah blah, and then like, okay, yeah, cool, we get the point. Don't overdo it. It can be very abrasive, but that's how you get into that. uh Getting dialogue consistent with different voices is hard. Yes, it's it does feel like you are trying to get into multiple hit spaces at once. It can be very interesting. Yeah, but it depends on how far you want to go. I don't think. Okay, so there's two extremes of dialogue, right? You can go with like every character literally sounds the same, right? Where you look at it and then you can tell, right? But at the same time, you don't need like 20 different accents. Like some people will be like, okay, this man slurs the s's, and that person will always add a filler word. He'll always like, oh, you're going over to the bar, eh? Right? Then like, oh yeah, like what you gonna do there, eh? Like, like you don't have to make it so obvious for every single line, right? I think it can be as simple as like one character is like short, right? He uses short words, like, oh, nice, right? Like going to the bar, cool. Right. And the other one is like, oh yeah, so I'm going to the bar later. Yeah, do you wanna come along? I'm hanging out with some friends. Blah, 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 blah. Like, I think you can play around with that. It doesn't have to be like every character is very distinct. It's up to you. Um, yeah, easy to make your character sound like they're speaking in Discord. Yeah, I think so. You could do that. Do they use slang and what's their attitude? So I think these kind of show through dialogue. I think yeah, it's quite interesting. Yes. Okay. Emotion. Emotion is also another interesting aspect of a character. You don't. The thing about emotion is it tends to change from scene to scene. They're not. You ideally don't want to be a character. Don't want to write a character who's always like perpetually angry or perpetually sad, because that can come across as very one dimensional. Yeah, and in fact, even for emotions, that is very nuanced. So this is an emotion wheel. People use it in therapy, right? Why is it useful in therapy? It's because when people say I'm angry, right? Angry could mean very different things, right? Do you feel angry because someone has let you down, right? And then you feel betrayal, right? Then there's betrayal. Or are you feeling more resentful instead? Right? Are you angry because you know someone else said something and you thought it was a stupid idea, so you think you're very dismissive and you're very like, why is this person such an idiot, right? So you can break emotions down into a lot of like into very specific ideas. You need that diagram. Okay, if you want to find the diagram, search the emotion wheel. You've seen it come to therapy. Yes, it is very useful. Yeah, so it's you can use these words in your writing as well. But it's also very good to it is it's good for self discovery. It's good for therapy, but it's also good to help you discover your characters also, right? And the specific flavor of the emotion that they are feeling, you can once you understand it, like and the subtle nuances between them, you can explore them better. Yeah. When describing a character, don't try to focus only on one aspect. Try to talk about different aspects. So I think this is a pitfall where people start to describe and then like they go into the clothes. The clothes has this, there's a scarf, there's this other thing down there, and then he has this very fancy belt buckle and blah 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 blah. Okay, like try to talk about like their facial expression. Try to talk about their build, how their clothes fit over the build. Does it fit well? Right, what are they currently doing? Are they walking across the room in a very like determined like speed, right? Like he's just walking in confident strides, right? Are they fidgeting? Kind of what, just figure it out, right? um Also, don't try to over describe a character. Sometimes people do that. They spend like 3 pages describing, I don't know. Please don't do that. See if their traits can be revealed, right? So instead of telling us at the start, this man is mean, right? Why don't you just talk about his appearance first? He's walking in confident strides, and then someone spills like coffee in front of him, and then he stands and he glares at the person. And it's like, if you have spilled that on me, there would have been consequences. Bam, like, you see, you feel it, right? And you see, this is kind of like show don't tell. Don't tell me he's mean, show me he's mean, right? Yeah, JT, correct. Um, yeah. Then so you try to show it across the scene. Try to focus on unique character features also. It's helpful to readers because sometimes like they're struggling to identify who is who. Especially sometimes you start a story and there's like five different characters to know and you're just like, oh my goodness, how am I gonna handle five characters, right? Whereas if you give that each of them a very a very specific or like very, what's the term called, like basically you give them very distinctive traits, you know like, and you might be able to help the reader learn more about them and remember them better. Another way is also to introduce them one at a time, right? You maybe it's just two people talking and then they start to recruit the team, and as you recruit the team you find out more about each person because the pair of the initial pair of characters have to kind of interview them and then you can slowly learn, right? Use vivid descriptions as well. Try not to make it bland. Okay. Let me look at some questions also. Okay. Time to describe character. Proceeds to describe every detail about the hair, eyebrow, eyes, nose, lips until you have enough details to sculpt a perfect replica. Oh boy. Yeah. What kind of person will write over 3 pages of just a character description? Um, Sometimes people they'll write the describe and then they'll start talking about the backstory and then they'll be like, oh, this person is sad and he doesn't have a lot of friends because when he was young and then his parents died in an accident and then he's been abused and bullied and like, okay, cool. It can be quite uh it can be quite a slog and I would usually just skim. It's such a difficult concept to understand because teachers keep saying without explaining. Yeah. Inner layers. I haven't seen a lot of examples of people being described in that detail, but every time they describe the piece, people are like, I get it, that's food. I've seen a lot in furry stories. Yes, okay. So furry stories, people they tend to talk about their persona detail and they'll be like, okay, he's a blue wolf, but there's like a green stripe running down his back, and then his paws are like white color up to his wrist, and then this and that and this and that. Usually I'll just reduce it down to like, oh, the blue wolf. Like I get that he has pink. All right, that's not gonna be what I remember, what I'll be describing because like I am not gonna make you remember. Because in the end, right, just have to keep in mind that the more description you give, I mean, same with the location, right? Like the setting. If you describe too much, and the reader struggles to comprehend and imagine in their mind, right? Then you're giving them a lot of work and they're gonna be confused. So unless that is gonna somehow come into the story later down the line, please don't indicate, right? Only if like, okay, in like Harry Potter, like there's a short boy. I don't even remember, short hair. He has a lightning scar over the forehead. There you go. That lightning scar is gonna come later down the line, right? So early on we describe it, right? But I don't care if you have like a mole somewhere else or like he has like a little scratch where he injured himself as a kid. If it's not important, don't describe it. Right? If it does bring out the character in a certain way, right? Like for instance, it's the scar from like a battle, right, in the past. Right? Even if it's not gonna come up, it does help to showcase the character. So in that case, do it. Right? But if it's not gonna it doesn't have any relevance, then maybe skip it, right? Uh yeah, you mentioned vivid descriptions. I will show you examples in a bit of how we can make descriptions more vivid. In a bit. Blue Wolf original. uh, yeah. You can kind of understand wanting to do that if you got a unique species, but you try to avoid that and leave a link in the story description. Yes and okay, so this is interesting, right? Do you want your story to be self-contained, right? Like, do you want people to be able to read your story without having to reference a reference sheet, right? Um, And in some cases, it's fine to say no. You need the reference sheet to to read the story. I mean, if you look at fantasy books, they do put down. Sometimes they do include like character profiles. Sometimes they include a map of the whole continent with all the different like different nations that live within, and that's fine, right? Sometimes it is a part of it. It's just something to think about if you want that to be a part, right? Usually in most cases, people don't need to know like every single detail of the persona, so I will just let it be a standalone thing. You've been trying to embed descriptions, but it can feel like a reveal. Like you have this character and only you realize halfway through that he's actually a wolf. Okay, so similar with settings, right? You you want to describe the things that are the most obvious, right? If you step into a room, what are the first things you see? What are the first things you notice, right? And so if it's very obvious, you should probably tell us, right? So if he's a wolf and you feel like that's the most obvious thing that you'll see, tell us he's a wolf, right? Um, if the gender is very obvious, tell us, right? If the gender is not obvious, that's also something you observe, right? And then tell us as well. Ambiguous gender, right? Make all their obvious traits obvious to the reader as well. But whereas if they have like this tiny little star tattoo on the back of their ear and you can't see it, right? Then it's okay. You can find out later. Uh Chekhov's character trait. If you mention it, it's gotta be important in some way for law or distinction. I mean, yeah, you can. You got halfway through a story the other day before you realized the main character was a dragon because the author finally mentioned his tails and horns. Yeah, if it's confusing, then yes, you don't want to confuse your reader, make it obvious. How to describe vividly without over describing? I will show you later examples. Yes. Okay. Obvious is a reasonable thing. Sort of like scene setting. Yeah, I mean it's up to you. Yeah, okay. More tips. Surface level traits can differ between scenes and context. So if the character changes clothes, that's fine, right? If they are in a good mood today but a bad mood on another day, that's fine. They don't have to be angry all the time. Some people make the mistake and like, okay, this man is always angry. Like, do you really want to have a character trait be I am angry 24/7? I mean, if you really want to, that's fine. And if it works for your story, then I'm not gonna stop you, right? But I think this is important to ask yourself, right? And in fact, the way the character speaks, acts, and dresses will be different depending on the scenario. So, example, you think about the way you talk to your parents versus the way you talk to your friends, right? Versus the way you talk to your school project mates versus the way you talk to a boss, right? Every time you talk to a different person or in a different scenario, the way you speak will be different, right? The way you dress will be different, right? And like that's kind of, in fact, the way you act will be different as well. So I think that's also important to think about, right? You don't need to keep the character too consistent, right? Because otherwise the character can feel very flat, right? So on some days the character can be like, okay, I'm jovial, I'm joking, right? But if it's in the middle of a fight scene and you're trying to run away from the villain that's trying to chase you down and kill you, like the comedic relief character doesn't have to try and be funny all the time, right? He could also be serious, right? You don't have to make the funny guy funny all the time, right? I think sometimes if you try to make him funny in like a very serious scenario, it can feel very forced. So think about that when you write. Out of character is serious business. Um, yes and no. Okay, just keep in mind, just out of character means the person is not acting in character. So usually you see this in like fan fiction where people describe and they're like, oh, this is not like the way you describe this character, like the way you describe Avatar, like Aang in this story is not how he would do in the anime. So that's our character. Our character is also sometimes when writers end up writing a character doing something like how is this person who's very nice suddenly mean at the other person, right? Like it's very uncharacteristic specifically like mean for that person, right? But you could also paint it in like a more holistic sense where this person seems very nice and that's a facade. Inside they're very mean, but they hide it very well. And they've been hiding it very well for years and years. But when they get really tired, right, and their patience is stretched, they will not hesitate to snap at the person and be mean about it. See, there we go. That is still in character, right? Yeah, I mean, in the same way, you are nice sometimes and you're not so nice at other times. I think that's like, you don't have to write someone having like the same personality everywhere. Yeah. Okay, you love it when the funny guy in the story suddenly gets super serious and gives the best advice. Yeah. Your favorite is when a lazy guy gets serious and turns out they're the master of whatever task they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples, right? We can say the old man had white hair, a long beard, and broad shoulders. His eyes were full of energy, right? Okay. What do you guys think of? Gandalf the White. Oh my goodness. Wait. Have you guys been looking at the next slide? Are you guys cheating? Okay, what the heck? Cheating. Okay, yes. But you see, the thing is, this is not the most. This is not a very good description of the character, right? So let's take a look at how it's described in the Fellowship of the Ring. Gandalf was shorter in stature than the other two, but his long white hair, his sweeping beard, and his broad shoulders make him look like some wise king of ancient legend. In his aged face, under the great snowy brows, his eyes were set like coals that could suddenly burst into fire. You see? Um, so this is what I mean. Paula earlier asked about how do you do vivid description, right? This is an example, right? We could have went with just this, right? But if you can make the character sound like this, he's gonna come across as more. There's more personality in the description. Um, the You could also see some. I mean, remember we talked about purple prose as well. Are you over describing? It's like a very fine line. Some people might not prefer this. Some people would prefer the earlier one and say that's simpler, easier to read, right? But this is just another example. I think this one comes across as more colorful, so you can consider. Yeah, I see some people just like I don't like the descriptions too heavy. That's also okay. I think that's fair. To each their own. I think that's kind of like the beauty of writing. And remember, I told you guys that you will find your author's voice as you go across writing. You will find what you prefer. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at some other examples, right? So this housekeeping. I have not read all of these books. I've been looking up examples online for good character descriptions and I've been picking them. So disclaimer over here. But let's take a look at some of them. In the last year, she continued to settle and began to shrink. Her mouth bowed forward and her brow sloped back, and her skull shone pink and speckled within a mere haze of hair, which hovered about her head like the remembered shape of an altered thing. She looked as if the nimbus of humanity were fading away and she were turning monkey. Tendrils grew from her eyebrows and coarse white hair sprouted from her lip and chin. When she put on an old dress, the bosom hung empty and the hem swept the floor. Old hats fell down over her eyes. Sometimes she put her hand over her mouth and laughed, her eyes closed and her shoulders shaking. So you see, what kind of imagery does this give you? Yeah, aging. Yeah. Is this lady transforming? No. I think it refers to like an old lady. Okay, again, I didn't read the book. I have disclaimer. But aging woman past her prime. Yeah. Okay, but I think it's nice, it's not just the lady is old, right? Because old ladies come in a lot of shapes and sizes, right? You can have an old lady, she's round, she's jovial, she's happy, she's just like, oh yeah, sure, come in, sweetie, I poured some tea for you, right? And then she, like, you go into her living room, like everything is covered with, like, those nice little, it's not just a sofa, it's a sofa with like cloths over it, and it's all the lacy kind of cloths that she's been buying from online or whatever. And then her coffee table, she brings out a nice little coaster that is pink as well, and then she's like, ah yeah, make yourself comfortable, right? This one feels almost sad, right? It feels like she's fading away, right? It feels like just withering away, and it feels so sad, right? But that's what you accomplish with a description like this, right? Like her old dress doesn't fit her anymore, right? Her the bosom hung empty, which basically means she's not as busty as before. I don't know, right? Old hats fell down over her eyes. That means it no longer fits her because she's been shrinking, right? Like she's just smaller and smaller. But it sounds so sad, you see, and like you can accomplish like emotional connection, right? Here you are not even like, she hasn't said a single word, right? You haven't seen her interact with another person, but already from reading this description, you feel something for her, right? Okay, another one, Invisible Man. So I believe this is talking about, I think this covered racial idea, right? And like talked about like how minorities, like, it's a story about minorities if I'm not wrong. So it goes, I'm an invisible man. So notice this is first person. Normally, when you're describing like a lot of physical traits, you're talking about, usually you see them from the third person point of view. Like, you're describing the person from the outside. So you'll get like, I'm an invisible, but this is first person, right? So I'm an invisible man. No, I'm not a spook like those who haunted Edgar Allan Poe, nor am I one of your Hollywood movie ectoplasms. I'm a man of substance, of flesh and bone, fiber and liquids, and I might even be said to possess a mind. I'm invisible, simply because people refuse to see me. So this is interesting. It's not really like a description of a person's physical traits, right? But it talks about, it kind of tells you something about the person, right? And it tells you about the person through the way others interact with the narrator here. It's interesting, the person clarifies that he's not a ghost or slime of sorts. Yeah. It's a fascinating way to state that people refuse to see him. Yeah. It's interesting, right? It shows you a bit about the character. It shows you a bit of the person's personality, right? But it speaks as a society as a whole. I think that's quite interesting. So these are things that you can explore. Okay, so any questions? Yeah, good. Okay. It's interesting because it assumes a lot of imagination. Yeah, I think I mentioned before, right? Writing is a collaborative effort. You are going to write something, right? But you cannot describe every single detail. And so the reader has to take it upon themselves to fill in the gaps, right? And so your story forms the framework, right? You're doing inception, you're architecting the world, and then they fill in the details with their subconscious. What's the thought process when writing a character like this? Ooh, thought process. I think if you can get to the point where you can see the character, because if you don't understand the character, if you don't see the character in detail, right, you will find it hard to make the reader feel the same way. So I think important is to be able to imagine a character. Maybe you don't have to go down all the way to the full backstory and their Maya brick and their horoscope and their date of birth and then like their childhood experiences growing up, right? You don't need every single detail, right? But the same way, if you have a best friend, right, you can probably predict what your best friend will do or say in different scenarios, right? So do you know your characters on that level? Can you put them on a page and express them with the full colors of of who you are. Like the same way you know yourself in like the full colors, right? You know what you would do in each scenario, and different scenarios bring out the best and worst of you, right? Can you do the same for your characters? Is there a sort of flow chart or template? I'm breaking it down into the factors that you can think about, but when it comes to the description, I think you need to think about what your story has to show, right? You can't just say, okay, first you describe the face, then you describe the clothes and his body together, and then you put him in a location, and then you have him interact for 3 sentences. Like, I don't think that's a template. Like, in fact, you saw the 3 examples previously, they're all very different in structure. I think it has to fit the story you're working on. Yeah, you don't like the passages that you showed. Okay, I think that's fine. Like, okay, so if this method of description happens for um every single page, then yes, that's too much, right? But if you are introducing a character for the first time, right, I recommend you describe enough for the reader to follow along. The same way I think someone mentioned like you didn't even know the character is a dragon until the mention of horns and tail, right? So if the reader has to get halfway into your book only to realize that that the main character is actually a girl, not a guy, right? And that's not the point of the story, then you might want to describe earlier. Yeah. So this is okay, yes, but you look at this, right? This is not an info dump yet. It's not to the point where you feel like, okay, I have enough, right? Everything in moderation. It doesn't mean that just because 3 pages of character description is bad, I don't do any character description. Like, that's not fair either, right? If a character comes in, okay, imagine this, right? You're at a party, it's a beach party, everyone's in like beach clothes, everyone's having fun. Suddenly, someone walks in, right, wearing a police officer uniform with sunglasses, right? I think if that's the first thing you see, you should describe like a man walked in wearing a police officer walked in. He wore this. He wore sunglasses, right? If that's what you see in that scene, show the reader as well. Don't make them like walk down and then like the police officer suddenly talks to someone and he pulls down his sunglasses. Then only then I know there's a there's a pair of sunglasses. Like, that might be confusing because now the reader has to backtrack and like, oh, he's been wearing sunglasses, I didn't know that, right? So I think it's important to think about what descriptions make sense for the scene and what clarifies. Yeah, draw attention to what stands out and don't overwhelm them. Yes, like for instance, this one, like, it, especially if someone is going to be a main character or a very important character, right? It's important to establish. Here's another reason. Let's say your main character is interacting with this old lady, right? This main character has been there for years and years and years. She knows the old lady, right? Hypothetically, I don't haven't read the book again, right? She knows the old lady, right? But the readers don't know the old lady. And so when the main character interacts with the old lady in a certain way, right? You might not understand why she does the thing she do. After a while you say, oh, why is this main character treating her with so much pity? Or why is she so overbearing and trying to help out with everything, right? Maybe after you read this, you understand. You understand it. You understand why the main character does the thing she does, right? So I think it's important to think about, if that makes sense. I wouldn't tell you like a yes or no. I think it's up to you. So I won't tell you like, oh yeah, this description is good and you should follow. If you don't like it, it's up to you. But just so you know, it can be useful because sometimes you may need to get the character, like the reader, up to speed with what the main character knows, right? Or you can review it later down the line. I think that's fine. Any questions? Okay, by the way, if you're making fan fictions of already established characters, should you describe the character as if the reader just knows about the character for the first time? Fan fiction, generally, I feel like people tend to skim the character descriptions more, which is fine. But they do, if they are doing something out of character, where the characters they're writing act a bit differently or they have a slightly different backstory, they will put it at the front so that the reader is not surprised later down the line. Because otherwise, like again, they have to go backtrack through the story and like, okay, wait, here are the changes. Okay. Any more questions? Oh crap. Okay, we are not even. Okay, let's speed through the rest because we have 15 minutes left on this lesson. We'll take one more question. Let's go. How do you know if the character descriptions you did is enough? You will never know for sure. Reading is a subjective experience. One of the better ways to try is to just put it in front of people and ask them what do you think. So drive the character a bit off, but not too far. Yes, if it feels very out of the blue, right? Ask yourself, is it intentional? It could be intentional, right? It could be a reveal that this character that has been really nice has been a mean person all along and they're hiding. That's basically what those surprise villain reveal is, right? You're just like, oh, this nice guy has been a villain all along, and that's so out of character. But that's fine. That's part of the plot, right? But if it feels like how come they're doing something out of character and then it never gets addressed, it never gets answered, and it feels like the writer slipped up or the writer needed someone to be the genius in the scenario, and so they took the blur character and made him a genius, and then after that he's blur again, right? Then it feels like a plot device, right? Without any character integrity. So that's you need to be mindful of that. Don't just use your characters as a way to push the story and then you just put them out of character. Like you make them do things they wouldn't do. Okay, let's continue on. I will answer questions as we go along. So, character traits below the surface. So, underneath the iceberg, there are a lot of things that you can think about that will drive their actions, right? These things these emotions, beliefs, core values, stuff like that, it will drive the way they dress, it will drive their habits, their expressions, stuff like that. You know, so think good to think about, right? You don't have to plan the character's entire backstory. So don't need to come up with like the full Myers Briggs. Here's like what he did at his first birthday, second birthday, third birthday. It doesn't you don't have to go the full detail down, right? But I do know some writers what they'll do is they will come up with a character. Maybe they'll even like let the character in their own voices. That means if a character is like a very flirtatious person, they will let that character speak for one page. They'll be like, introduce yourself in. Imagine if you ask your character, introduce yourself in one page, right? Then they will write in that character's voice and a self introduction, their backstory, stuff like that. And then they will use that as a way to flesh out the character. But they won't put that into the story. They won't try to show all of that in the story because that will be too much, right? So as it comes up throughout the course of the story, if it becomes relevant, they will use that aspect of the character, right? But if it's not used, it's fine. Remember, just like the iceberg, the things you see, the things the reader will see, is just a small portion of your character's entire being. Yeah. Okay. So, a lot of internal traits tend to be more apparent in first person point of view. So when a person speaks, right, their thought process, their voice, their inner voice tends to come out more, right? But like you see you you see a kid fall down, right? If you're in third person, the character might just be a painful look on his face, right? And sure, realize like, oh, okay, he feels hurt or he feels empathy for the kid, right? Whereas if you're in first person, it could be empathy. It could be like, oh, why is the kid running around? Ugh. Right? It could be like he remember falling as a kid and he didn't like it. Or maybe he had a painful childhood or whatever. And all of that is coming into play here. We don't know, right? But in first person, you can kind of voice that out more easily, right? And so these are more apparent in first person. If you want third person omniscient, you can also do that. You just like, oh, so and so had a pain look on his face because it reminded him of when he was a kid and painful memories came out. I don't know. Right. Don't try to describe these traits directly. So try not to be like, oh, info dump everything. Just find opportunities for the characters to showcase these traits. So if you have a character who is like the smart genius in the group, don't don't just say he's a smart genius, right? Maybe early on in the story, if this is important, right? Like maybe they're trying to get into the first into like they're trying to get into the city, and then the guards are not letting them in, right? The introduction is they're trying to get into the city, right? You have the smart character do something smart, like, oh, like, bribe the guard or find an alternative way in, or if a person is like the magic user, he can immediately like, okay, I'm just gonna make a portal, whoops, you're in, bye, right? And then like, then you can showcase these traits by making them do stuff, right? So I think that's kind of what you guys were asking also, right? Instead of describing, can you show me, have it come out through the plot, right? Yes, you can, right? And if it helps, make it such that the plot requires them to do it early on, so you can introduce the characters early on. Um, yeah, okay, so let's try and look at some examples. Describe a character who hates dressing up for formal events. Yeah. So I'm gonna go through example Hunger Games. Hunger Games is great. Oh crap, where is this? Wait, why is this not showing? Okay, wait. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I can't imagine what Effie will have to teach me that could take 4 hours. But she got me working down to the last minute. We go to my rooms and she puts me in a full length gown and high heeled shoes, not the ones I'll be wearing for the actual interview, and instructs me on walking. The shoes are the worst part. I have never worn high heels and can't get used to essentially wobbling about on the balls of my feet. But Effie runs around them in full time, and I'm determined that if she can do it, then so can I. Yeah. So this way, like, this is first person. Um what are we describing? We're describing the character internal traits. Right? We're talking about showcasing who they are inside. So this is first person. Um You see, if it's third person and you're not looking into the character's head, you'll probably talk about like how she's like angry and she's just like, she's annoyed. But here are some parts, right? The shoes are the worst part. I've never worn high heels. So she doesn't like it, right? See, I've never worn high heels. This is something you only know if you are reading the character's mind, right? But also, you see, she runs around them in full time, and I determine if she can do it, so can I. So there's a bit of a competitive spirit also here as well, right? She's just like, I don't, like, you know what? If you can do it, I can too. See, so there's a bit of competitive spirit, right? Which is interesting, right? You're bringing out more of the character, which is why show don't tell is useful, right? Instead of telling me I don't like to dress up for formal events, right? But like, she got me working down to the last minute. She's already like, ugh, 4 hours, every minute of it, right? And then the shoes are the worst part. I've never worn them before. You're wobbling around on the balls of my feet, right? Like, just ugh. So there's a bit of like angst that is coming out, right? Imagine a different scenario, right? Oh, okay, I'm learning how to wear feet. I'm not used to them. Uh, but I think it's fine. I can learn. If Effie can do it, so can I, right? I was a bit unstable for the first few steps, but by the second hour, I'm already used to it. Like Effie tells me I need to get used to the dress too, but we'll get to it when we get to it. You see, that's a more optimistic way to look at it, right? But here is like a very cynical, a very right? And it comes true, right? The character's internal traits are coming true, which is good. Yeah. So next, describe a character who doesn't like being a leader, but due to circumstances, they have to learn to step up and take on the role. So how would you describe this? That would be you. You can just describe yourself. What would be a good way to describe a character like this? So think about how you can express this, right? Without trying to just, okay, here's the backstory. He doesn't like to step up. He has to step up, right? How can I express that? laziness, a lot of pressure. So, what kind of scene or what kind of plot would you come up with for a character to showcase these traits? Yeah, so maybe there's a task that needs to be done. Teacher asks for volunteers. Everyone is silent. No one wants to volunteer. So the character has to throw caution to the wind and says, "If no one wants to go, then I'll go." Yeah. So you can guys can think about that. I see you guys coming up with ideas. That's good. Okay. But a short paragraph won't be enough. You probably want, so usually this ends up being something in like a lot of your hero kind of stories where like, oh, I can't do this, like I'm just me, right? Harry Potter is like that. Harry Potter is like, I'm just Harry, right? You have the Avatar, like Legend of Aang, right? And he's like a playful boy who's just like, being the Avatar boring, right? You have a lot of you have a lot of stories like this, right? There's a chosen one, or like sometimes even it's not even a chosen one. It's just like there is someone at the wrong place at the wrong time, and now he has to do everything, right? But you can go through with the character's journey and then slowly discover who they are as a person as they get tested and they grow, right? So yeah, think about that. I see you guys have having a lot of ideas. Okay, so more tips, right? Rather than describing the character, showcase their traits while they are interacting with the surroundings, interacting with other characters, or basically how they react to things, right? If something happens, like if something unexpected happens, do they respond in anger? Do they respond in like, oh no, what are we gonna do? I'm lost. Or do they respond in confidence, right? Bless you, correct. Okay, so there's a lot to try to see how they would interact in a scene, right? Because the I feel like a good way to express a character would be, you don't just tell me who they are. Because if you just tell me, oh, this person is nice, this person is mean, this person is like wants to be a leader but doesn't know how to step up, this person is afraid of change, like don't like that's not gonna connect me to them, right? You should show me what they do in the scenarios. In fact, I'll show you guys later examples of characters that you'll connect with on like deeper levels than just like here's a bunch of description. Okay. Okay, any questions? Let's pause for questions, but let's make it fast. Yeah, and also focus on important stuff rather than all the things. Yes. You have limited attention span, right? You think about like a budget, right? When if I give you like a $50 budget, right, you will spend on the things that you find are important, right? In the same way, your readers' their time and attention is a limited resource, right? What are you gonna spend on that gives you the most value, right? It's not about length, right? You don't just say, oh, they're paying money to read a book, so I'm gonna give you more words to make it worth your while. That's not true. The real cost, right? Books are easy to buy. Okay. The real cost comes in their attention. And this is why people don't have people have like unread books left on their in their bookshelves collecting dust. It's because they can't they paid for the book financially, right? But they can't pay for it in attention, right? So how can you make it worth their attention? Okay, let's move on. All right, engaging the reader. Okay, make your characters relatable. Okay, not all the characters have to be relatable, but the key characters, I would recommend making them relatable. You don't have to agree with their views, but you can see where they come from. You can also choose not to do it because maybe you want the characters to be jarring, unlikable, mysterious. So I have a story which I was writing. Not I've discontinued it since. But basically the main character is someone who you will not like, right? But across the story, right, they will kind of fall in love with someone else who is the polar opposite, and they will learn how to soften the edges, and like the character development will, like, that's supposed to be like kind of like the heartwarming part, right? So you can do this intentionally, but relatable characters tend to give you like a stronger, um like it helps the reader go through, especially if they like the character, or if they feel, it doesn't matter, maybe they don't have to like it, you just have to feel strong emotions, and that can help engage the reader as well. So example, right? I don't know, how do you guys feel about this character? Madman, bland. This character is bland, really. Sympathetic villain. Okay, so for those who are not super clear, you guys had a few years to follow up. Okay, this man wants to wipe out. Okay, so the resources in the universe is dwindling, and if people keep going at this rate, they will run out and the universe will die. And so he says, if I wipe out half the universe, right, I will, like, people will be able to live for longer. But no one wants to just like sacrifice themselves, right? And so he says, I will do the difficult decision. I'll make the difficult decision. I will do what have to be done. I will destroy, he'll get the stones, destroy half the universe, and then they will, everyone who survives will live longer. And so, you see, well-intentioned extremists, yeah. You found you need a main character to be either competent, moral, or funny. Thanos didn't really get any of those. That's because he's the villain. His character wasn't really developed much in the movie. Okay, for a villain, he's way more developed than most, because a lot of them are just like, oh, bad guy, I don't like Batman, right? So I'm gonna destroy, or like, I'm evil, or I'm crazy, right? Like, and then I do the things I do, right? I want to take over the world. Let's blow up the entire continent of America, right? So, so it for I brought this out as an example to kind of show you that, in fact, a lot of people related to it. Yeah, this villain has a moral dilemma, and his actions basically drive the story forward. Yes. Yeah, you guys can agree and disagree. I think that's fair. No worries. But this is just an example. You can think about what makes a character relatable in that sense. Okay, let's try another character. All right. What do you guys think of her? What's her name? I forgot. Uh, Let me Google that. Dolores Umbridge. Everyone's like, you, no, 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 death to the code. The death to the throat, she needs to die. The actress played her very well. Like, I see everyone angry in the chat, which means J.K. Rowling did a good job. In fact, the actress did a good job as well, right? This kind of this is amazing when you get readers to feel for your characters. Not every single character needs to be like strong emotions for the reader, right? But if you could do that, right, you are doing things that a lot of writers cannot do, right? You really wanna, like, you guys are quoting her from like quoting the books and the movies. See, this is how you make a character very memorable, right? So stuff like that can help. It helps make your story more colorful. I recommend you try. If you want to make like really nice characters for readers to feel, you want to make really detestable characters for your readers to hate, right? Play around with that. Not every character needs to be like, okay, yeah, sure, he's another piece in the puzzle, or like, another pawn on the chessboard. Like, it doesn't have to be this way, right? You can make the readers feel for different characters. Yes. So let's move on to pitfalls to avoid. Avoid the Mary Sue Gary Sue thing. So Mary Sue is when like the character, this a lot of this happens in like those self-fulfilling, like self-indulgent stories where, oh, this character is troubled, like he has a tragic backstory, he was an orphan, his parents died in a tragic accident, maybe he's like from a tribe, and then some evil people destroyed his entire village, he's the only survivor, and then he's like he has trust issues and all that other shit. But then for some reason, right, like he goes to high school, and like everyone likes him, and he's like the cool guy, and then he has like friends, and then like, like, no, that's not how it works. um yeah. Okay, Mary Sue can actually be interesting. Lucky Luke, for example, always wins, but the responses from people around him makes it interesting. Yes, if it's intentional. If it's intentional, that's fine, right? But it but in a lot of cases, it comes across as the author's wish fulfillment. Right? And in fact, like, usually if it becomes that way, right, it's like all the plot in the story goes to waste because, oh, there's a villain, oops, they're gonna win, and they're gonna win effortlessly. There is no struggle because they are perfect. Right? Power fantasy to a certain extent. Like, they basically, the author is just inserting themselves into the character, and they're just like, I want to live in a world that is perfect, or I am perfect, and everything goes right for me. Right? So that's usually comes across as very bland. Self-insert gone wrong. Yeah, it happens a lot. So that's usually you call that Mary Sue's or Gary Sue's in the case of male characters. Feel free to explore that. I would also say avoid starting with the character wakes up, goes to bathroom, and looks in the mirror. So that's something that people do as a way to start a story, right? So I want to introduce a character. They say, oh, character wakes up, yawn, goes to the bathroom, starts brushing her teeth, and as she brushes her teeth, she looks at her green eyes and her long blonde hair, and then like, her hair, she likes to keep it. Then she starts washing her hair, and then like she starts wearing these clothes because she likes to wear black, and then like, oh, okay, slow down, right? Try not to do that. It can come across as bland. Okay, but again, know the rules so you can break them if you want to break them. Some people will do that, right? Character wakes up in the middle of a spaceship, right? Their bathroom is a futuristic bathroom. There is no tap. You just speak and say, turn on shower. The shower turns on. Warmer. Okay, set it to like, oh, then the AI voice says setting to 37 degree. It's not 37, I think that's too hot. Setting to some degree, like 32 degrees, which is your preferred temperature from past experiences. Like, thank you. Right. And then like he steps in up back into his room. His clothes are already there because like like there's a deposit box that just, you know like just dumps the clothes there, and so you don't even have to choose your clothes. It's automatically picked for you by the spaceship AI, right? That can come across as interesting, right? But sometimes people just, you need to know why we don't do the normal bedroom scene in order to make that kind of bedroom scene waking up look good. Does that make sense? Okay. You've heard that Mary Sue isn't intrinsically bad. Wish fulfillment isn't bad. It's only bad when the author doesn't know it. It depends. Again, sometimes the author knows it and they decide let's roll with it, which is fine. But the reason why it tends to be bad is because Gary and Mary Sue tends to reduce the stakes, right? There is no character development. There is no character struggle. If there's a villain, you know they're going to win. Like the not you know the main character is gonna win anyway. So like it comes across as bland, right? It does Even if the author knows it's bland and they continue to write it, it will still be bland. Unless they actively do something to change it. Yes. Unreliable narrator is an interesting way to make the Mary Sue thing work. Yes, but you need to be aware of the pitfalls in order to break the rules. Okay. Any questions? I see you guys are asking questions. uh, You guys are exploring the Mary Sue. Sure. If you guys wanna figure it out in the exercise, that is fine too. Okay, let's move on to the take-home exercises. Okay, so for the take-home exercise, we will establish characters through scenes. The first exercise, describe a character in a short scene from third person. So this way you are from the outside, you are looking at the character, you can describe more of their physical traits, right? For the second exercise, describe the character in a short scene through a first person point of view. So you can basically are going into their minds, right? Okay, so first person is difficult to describe, like the physical descriptions, which is why again the bedroom scene, the waking up and go to the bathroom and washing up thing is so popular, because it's hard for the character to say, I have green eyes like when I wake up. That's not how people wake up, right? So it would say, I wake up, I go to the bathroom, and as I brush my teeth, I look into my green eyes, right? And then I brush my brown hair, right? And that's how they use that to kind of convey physical description. But again, if it's first person, you don't have to focus on the physical description so much. See if you can showcase a character's personality through the first person. Can you use your own OCs for your homework? Yes, go for it. I will give some examples. You can choose your own. It's up to you. That one I'm not picky. Like the main thing is practice, right? Okay, challenge yourself. So develop a character that you're not familiar with. I recommend, because like if you've been writing like soft spoken characters, or you're used to writing certain types of heroes and like whatever, right? Why don't you try writing something else? Have you tried writing about a mean guy, right? Why is he mean? Maybe he's jaded, or he's just like he's jaded with life. Why is everyone happier than me? And maybe from that, maybe it stems from jealousy. Like, why is everyone happier than me? I work so hard. Why am I not happy? And so the scene could be he's looking at a bunch of kids like playing with like a ball, and then it comes into his yard, and he's just like, I am gonna take that ball. And then the kids are like, yay, pass it back, sir. And then he just pops the ball because screw you. Why are you happy? Right? So stuff to think about. Can you use characters on no media? Go for it. You find most heroes cliche. I mean, it's up you know, again, to each their own, right? Some people like that. Stop having fun. Yeah, basically. If you're a new writer, you can keep the character. You keep to one character in the scene. If you're a bit more experienced, you can have multiple characters interact with your main character. Right. So if you see the scene I described with the old man, and it's like, why is everyone happy? You know, that doesn't even have to be an old man. It could be a 30-year-old guy who's just angry at the world, right? But basically, by using his interaction with the kids, it can help showcase his personality. Right. If you're new and you're not so sure and you don't want to try that, like that's fine. You can just stick to one character in the scene. Character prompts. I came up with a lot of. Okay, I didn't come up. I asked ChatGPT to come up with like a lot of random ideas, just so like you guys can use this for examples. You can like, if any of these spark interest, use it. If you don't like any of them, that's perfectly fine as well. Just find a character, find two characters that you wanna write about, and then you can do. Or otherwise, like you wanna do write your OCs, that's fine as well. Wow, all furry. Look, it's a furry writing course. Yeah. Look, I wasn't gonna come up with all this myself, so for those anti-AI people in the chat, like you can come up with the descriptions for me if you want to replace these descriptions. I'm too lazy. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, here I added some parts where you can break up, like you can describe the scene a bit. What's the character's goal, right? So if he's dealing with like the kids, what's his goal, right? Like his goal is to deal with the jealousy, right? It's out, like taking it out on the kids is how he deals with his internal jealousy, right? What's his personality? What's he wearing? What's his emotional state? Blah blah blah. If it's not relevant, feel free to leave it blank, right? But if you think it's important, like it's good to think about. Yeah, that's why I added it here as a way to say think about this. But not everything is important, so feel free to exclude. Yeah. Okay. Any questions about the homework or any questions about today's lesson? I see. You figure it's furry because there's enough writings about boring humans. I mean, you wanna talk about human beings, that's fine too. Can you write about pre-existing characters? Yes, you can, but take it that the reader doesn't know who you are referencing. So if you're gonna take Superman, take it that the reader doesn't know who Superman is and describe that to the reader. You try all furry. Go for it. I mean, it's up to you. Should you include dialogue? If it helps, I would say go for it, right? This is a bit of a challenge as well. So I think some people, some comic artists or some like screenplay writers, they have experimented with what if the next scene that they're writing has absolutely no dialogue. Can we showcase the characters or can we showcase the plot with no dialogue? And some people have done it very beautifully. So you can take a look at that. In fact, sometimes it even feels like dialogue could be the easy way out. So if you want to experiment with no dialogue, you can try that as well. It's like movies with no or little dialogue that you adore. It's up to you, up to you. If you want to use dialogue, go for it. It's a challenge. If you want to use no dialogue, even bigger, even bigger of a challenge. But for here, okay, so the exercise for today only focuses on character description. If you want to make the whole scene, sure, go for it. Like, yeah, there's no, I'm not gonna limit you guys on what you want to write. Just explore. In visual mediums like comics or animation, no dialogue is also a good test on how to tell a story. Yeah, like sometimes it feels like people rely on dialogue too much, right? Like, hi, I am going to the mall, right? But instead, why tell me you're going to the mall? Why don't you say, like, text the friend, guys, are you ready to go shopping? And then like she's dressed well, she has like her shades on, she has the heels ready to walk. I don't know, right? Express that beyond just dialogue. D&D session with no dialogue. Cool boy. Writing about story about going to the mall only to find zombies. Oh no. Okay, any other questions for today's lesson or the homework? If not, we will end off for today as well. You guys are good. Yeah. Study hall session after class. Yeah. So you guys, I think some of you guys, if you wanna pop into the one, which what's the Discord channel name? Meeting room. Yeah, you can pop into the meeting room and discuss stuff. Do you guys want me to go through some of the homework exercises? We could. Okay. Do you mind if I stream that to Twitch? Cause I promised my audience that my viewers audience that I will stream. So after this, so we could stream it. We could do it over on Twitch, and then we chit chat. It'll be more chill. It'll be more chatting. Yeah, less formal. So don't worry about it. Yeah. Okay, I will pass you guys the link in a bit. Gonna be shy. No, don't worry about it. Okay, let's wrap up for today's class. I will post the link to Twitch once I set that up there. I'll see you guys. All right. Okay. See ya.